The old house stood at the edge of town. It was a looming presence, shrouded in overgrown vines and shadowed by gnarled trees. Locals whispered tales of its dark past, of strange occurrences and unexplained noises. Most steered clear, but for three friends, Ravi, Priya, and Karan, the house represented a challenge.
"Let's go to the Whispering Shadows," he said, using the local nickname for the house. "We'll see if these ghost stories are true."
I don't know, Ravi, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It seems dangerous.
"Don't be silly, Priya. It's just an old house. What's the worst that could happen?"
With a mix of trepidation and nervous anticipation, the three friends made their way towards the house that held so many dark secrets. Little did they know that their curiosity would lead them into a nightmare. As they approached the house, a palpable chill settled over them. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of decay and damp earth. The laughter and chatter died in their throats, replaced by an uneasy silence.
Putting on a brave face, Ravi pushed open the creaking gate. The metal hinges groaned in protest, as if warning them to turn back. He led the way up the overgrown path, each step echoing in the stillness.
The front door swung open with a low groan, revealing a darkened interior. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that managed to penetrate the grime-covered windows. The air inside was stale and cold, heavy with the weight of neglect and forgotten memories.
This place is creepy, she whispered, her voice trembling. Maybe we should just go.
"Relax, Priya," he said, his voice echoing in the silence. "It's just an old house, nothing to be afraid of."
Ravi, his earlier bravado fading, felt a prickle of unease crawl up his spine. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them, its presence lurking in the shadows. As they ventured deeper into the house, the feeling of unease intensified, wrapping around them like a shroud. The house was a labyrinth of darkened rooms and creaking hallways. Each room they explored seemed to hold the remnants of a life long gone, filled with decaying furniture and forgotten belongings. It was in a small, dusty study that they made their most unsettling discovery. Hidden beneath a pile of rotting books, Karan uncovered a small, leather-bound volume. The leather was cold and slightly damp, etched with strange symbols that seemed to writhe beneath their fingertips.
What is it? Priya asked, her voice barely a whisper.
Karan brushed away the dust, revealing the title, The Book of Shadows. He opened it, revealing pages filled with spidery handwriting and disturbing illustrations.
Feeling a growing sense of dread, Ravi reached for the book. "We should leave this here," he said, his voice tight with apprehension. But Karan pulled the book away. "Don't be ridiculous," he said. "This is amazing. This book could be ancient, powerful."
As Karan traced the symbols, a cold draft swept through the room, extinguishing their flashlights and plunging them into darkness. Priya gasped, her heart pounding. In the darkness, they could have sworn they heard a whisper, faint and chilling. From that day forward, Karan was consumed by the book. He spent every spare moment poring over its pages, trying to decipher the strange language and unlock its secrets. He became withdrawn, isolating himself from his friends and family, his thoughts consumed by the book and its dark promises.
Karan, once full of life and laughter, was now pale and gaunt, his eyes shadowed and distant. He spoke little, and when he did, it was in hushed, frantic whispers, as if afraid to be overheard.
He's not himself, she said one evening, her voice heavy with worry. The book, it's changed him.
Ravi nodded, his brow furrowed with concern. He had tried talking to Karan, tried to pull him away from the book's grasp, but his friend wouldn't listen. It was as if the book had cast a spell on him, drawing him deeper into its darkness.
One day, Ravi and Priya went to Karan's apartment, hoping to reason with him. They found him hunched over the book, his face illuminated by the flickering light of several candles. The air was thick with the scent of incense, the room in disarray, covered in strange symbols drawn in chalk. "Karan," he said, his voice firm, "you need to stop this." Karan looked up, his eyes flashing with a strange light. "You don't understand," he whispered, his voice hoarse and strained. "This book, it holds the key to power beyond your wildest dreams."
Ravi and Priya exchanged a worried look. They had to help their friend before it was too late. They had to break the hold the book had over him. The air crackled with tension as Karan, his face illuminated by flickering candlelight, began to chant in a language that sounded both ancient and strangely familiar. The book lay open before him, its pages filled with disturbing illustrations and arcane symbols. He moved with an unnerving grace, his voice rising and falling in rhythmic cadence. Ravi and Priya watched in horror, their blood turning to ice. They had tried to stop him, to reason with him, but their pleas fell on deaf ears. Karan was lost to them, consumed by the dark power he sought to unleash. As the chanting reached a fever pitch, the shadows in the room began to writhe and twist. The air grew heavy, thick with a palpable sense of dread. The temperature plummeted, sending a chill down their spines.
Priya grabbed Ravi's arm, her grip like a vice. "We have to do something," she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. "He's going too far."
Ravi nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had to protect his friends, even from themselves. He lunged for the book, but Karan was too quick. He slammed it shut, his eyes blazing with an unnatural light. "Fools!" he hissed, his voice dripping with malice. "You cannot stop what you do not understand."
A wave of icy air slammed into them, throwing them back against the wall. The candles sputtered and died, plunging the room into darkness. A chorus of whispers filled the air, cold and menacing, as if the shadows themselves were closing in.